New York Magazine national correspondent Gabriel Debenedetti joins us now. Gabe, good morning. Good to see you again.
Morning.
Okay, Senate trial begins in 3 days. The big question is witnesses. For that to happen, several Republicans at least would have to vote with Democrats. Does that happen?
Well, it's unclear right now. I think a lot of Democrats are getting more confident that they're going to at least have this as a public debate. There are some Republican senators, Democrats need 4 on their side, who have said, we probably should hear from witnesses. There are some who say, well, if we're going to hear from the witnesses that Democrats want, maybe we'll call witnesses of our own. But this is going to be the big debate this week.
Who are the likely candidates?
Who are the likely candidates for senators, you mean?
Yes,
You have people like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and then there are some senators that are either older Republicans, someone like Lamar Alexander, who's from Tennessee and retiring, or you have people who are up for re-election this year, like Cory Gardner or Martha McSally, people who some Democrats sort of think, well, maybe we can put pressure on these guys to at least go out and say, you know, let's hear all the information possible.
We think of witnesses, and we heard in Nicole's report the mention of Lev Parnas.
Yes.
We've heard bits and pieces this week leaking out. Has anything that we've heard from him moved the needle at all?
Well, if it moves the needle, it might indeed move the needle on this question of witnesses, because there are a lot of Republican senators who are saying, you know, behind the scenes, well, this is interesting information. Why didn't we hear about this before? On the other hand, there are a lot of them saying, well, if we're just hearing about this now, their argument is, why didn't House Democrats bring this information up before? The answer is they couldn't, but it has moved the needle in that there is a conversation happening on Capitol Hill saying there's clearly a lot more information out here.
Right, despite questions about his credibility, Parnas's credibility.
Absolutely.
How do Alan Dershowitz and Ken Starr contribute to this team other than making big headlines?
Well, making big headlines is really what the president wants right now. But I think one thing that we're going to see is a lot of talk about the Clinton impeachment. And that's something that when the president was choosing his legal team here, he clearly wanted. He wanted a conversation about someone else's impeachment. But we're going to hear a lot about this precedent probably over the next few weeks, specifically over the next few days. But the reality is these are two people who the president sees a lot on television, clearly hears a lot from. They're not necessarily the people that a lot of Republican senators would have wanted leading his team.
So President Trump has been impeached.
Yes.
He's the first president to be impeached who's also running for re-election. How will that play out?
Well, because it's never happened before. We have no idea. But listen, this is obviously weighing on the president. He doesn't like that he has been impeached, quite obviously. However, people on his re-election campaign said they've raised a lot of money over it and that he can shore up his base talking about this. All that said, he is still historically unpopular, and there are Democratic candidates out there saying, listen, he's been impeached, but we still have to beat this guy.
And speaking of that election, so now you have Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden who can basically barnstorm in Iowa as much as they want, while Klobuchar, Sanders, and Warren have to sit in for the trial.
That's right. And you have Sanders already trying to book these late flights to Iowa so he can do nighttime rallies after the impeachment trial. Klobuchar told me recently that she's considering Skyping into Iowa. It's a big problem for these 3 senators because they're literally physically stuck in Washington in the final 15 days now.
And you mentioned the final 15 days, and how are things shaping up? We had the debate there earlier this week.
That's right. I've just come back from Iowa. It's an unprecedented toss-up. There are 4 candidates who could easily win this thing, and there are some more who are competing to surprise. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the shape of this race on caucus night, but until then, it's anyone's guess.
Isn't that what we want at this point?
Yeah.
It would be nice.
All right, Gabe Debenedetti, thank you. We appreciate it.